Diabetes Connections is brought to you by OneDrop, created for people with diabetes by people who have diabetes. By Real Good Foods, real food you feel good about eating. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
This week, there's a new superhero coming to the popular CW network lineup. Stargirl features actor Brec Bassinger, who lives with type 1. After they started production, she found out another person in the cast and on her superhero team also lives with T1D.
I think it's more of having that companionship, that person who understands when we're on the 17th hour of work and they bring out another snack that just is carby, but we're hungry and sleepy, but we don't want to eat all these carbs, and just being able to look at each other and talk to each other and understand, that was just so nice to have.
She'll share more about what it meant to have that actor Cameron Gelman on the set with her. We first spoke to Brec a couple of years ago after her run on Nickelodeon's Bella and the Bulldogs. She talks about what's changed with her diabetes management, advice about speaking up for what she needs without feeling weird about diabetes, and a lot more. An athletic edition of Tell Me Something Good this week, marathons, hiking, and that feeling when you do something your middle school coach told you you'd never do because of diabetes. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I'm so glad to have you along. We aim to educate and inspire about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection. I have a feeling that this interview is going to bring a lot of new people into the show. So just a quick word. I'm your host, Stacey Simms. My son was diagnosed with type 1 right before he turned 2. He is now 15 years old. He's had diabetes for more than 13 years. My husband lives with type 2 diabetes. I don't have diabetes. I have a background in broadcasting. I spent a lot of time in local television and radio news, and that's how you get the podcast. A reminder popped up on my phone this morning about one of the trips I was supposed to be taking. Like many of you, of course, we had travel plans for this spring and this summer, and I was going to a lot of diabetes conferences, and it's sad, right, to see those reminders pop up. But we have been doing a lot of virtual stuff, and that's been really fun too. Not the same, but a wonderful way to stay connected. And I'm bringing that up because I'm going to put links in the show notes. I've got a couple of events coming up, JDRF and other organizations. I did one for Project Blue November not too long ago. They've been really great about scheduling these talks, the online summits, the webinars. And I've been thrilled because my topic right now is the world's worst diabetes mom. And it's been so much fun to share the information. That's my book that is just out, and I'm still so excited about that. But it's been really fun to share it to people that I wouldn't have been able to meet, right? Because if I was going to Detroit, which I should have been going to this month, then we would be meeting people just at that summit. But instead, I get to meet people from all over the country. I'm trying to look at the silver lining on it. And really, that's about all we can do right now. But thank you so much. The support for the book in just the last couple of weeks has really picked up. If you want to check it out, of course, I'll put a link in the show notes. It's on Amazon. The World's Worst Diabetes Mom is a parenting advice and humor book. It's kind of part memoir, kind of part advice column, and all about our experiences making every mistake in the book when it comes to diabetes and watching my son grow up as a confident and responsible and healthy kid, despite my many, many errors along the way. So thanks for letting me tell you about that. And boy, I hope we get back to see each other in person soon. It'll be a while, but it'll get better. Right to Brec in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Real Good Foods, nutritious food delivered straight to your door. They have so many options. They have pizzas. I think they were first known for their pizzas. And they have this great cauliflower crust pizza. They have a chicken crust pizza. And the pizzas come in different varieties or just plain crust, and then you can make your own. We also really enjoy the breakfast sandwiches. They are 7 carbs per sandwich, 22 grams of protein. They always post stuff on their Instagram. They have these great varieties that what they show what you can really do to jazz this stuff up. And people put all sorts of things that add to their sandwiches. I like them just the way they are. You can find out more about all of their products, where to buy, how to order. Just go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Real Good Foods logo. My guest this week is the star of the newest superhero show on the CW. Brec Bassinger plays Stargirl, a.k.a. Courtney Whitmore. And this show is getting great reviews. I will link some of that up in our Facebook group. And if you're not familiar with the CW lineup, this is the same people behind the hit shows Arrow and Flash and Supergirl. I will put this clip in the group as well. I know you can't see it, but here's a little taste.
This isn't a joke, Courtney. You and I don't stand a chance against him.
Stop trying to scare me. I'm not going to sit on the sidelines. I'm putting together this new team to get justice. This is our destiny.
Stargirl is set to premiere May 18th. Now, I first spoke with Brec 3 years ago, and since then, she's moved out. She's living on her own. And as you'll hear, that is a big reason why she now wears a CGM. I need to tell you, we did this interview back in January before COVID-19 and the quarantines and all the changes we're going through right now. So I tell you that just so you're not surprised at the tone, right? It's a little bit different, a little bit lighter than we might have done right now. And she's also talking about travel and conventions and things that, have absolutely changed. All right, but here is my interview with Brec Bassinger. Brec, thanks so much for coming back on the show. It's been a while. It's great to talk to you again.
Yeah, 3 years. It's good to talk to you as well, Stacey.
Well, a lot has certainly changed for you. This is so exciting. I mean, you were busy then. You're busy now, but what can you tell me about Stargirl? I mean, we'll talk about diabetes eventually, but let's talk about the show.
Yeah, the important stuff in life. Totally kidding. All of last year, 2019, I was in Atlanta filming it. I've seen a few of the episodes, and I'm really proud of it. I've never been part of something that I'm so shamelessly proud of, where the soundtrack, but doesn't even feel like bragging. I'm just so proud of it. I want every single person to see it. And I feel like that has to do a lot with the showrunner. His name's Jeff Johns. He worked on Wonder Woman and Shazam, and he's just so amazing. And the spirit and happiness he brought to set, I feel really just rubbed off on everyone that was a part of it. So I really am shamelessly so excited for everyone to see it.
I think that's great. And, we've been watching the CW DC Heroes comic book shows for a couple of years now. And, they're just fun. And they're for families. They're good-hearted. Is this in that same spirit?
Yeah, it totally fits in with those. I've had my family, they got to all watch the first episode of the holidays with me. And they all really enjoyed it. But I feel like as a whole, this one's more comparable to a film, a movie, just the way it's filmed, the way it's written. So with Flash and Arrow, it's normally a villain per episode. And ours is more kind of one season story arc. You can't just sit down and watch one episode and know what's going on. You kind of have to watch the full season, more like a Stranger Things. I'd say that's kind of the main difference. But as of spirit, and it's just happy, it's not too dark, it's not racy. It's definitely a family-friendly show, which there's not much of those these days.
That is great to hear. All right, so I know nothing about TV process and CGI and everything else, but to watch what's out there already, it looks like not only are there a lot of special effects, there's a lot of practical effects, and you're doing a lot of stunts. Are you doing all of those stunts or some of those stunts? I mean, it looks like it's a very challenging role physically.
Yeah, so Stargirl, she has her cosmic staff. So before we started filming, they put me in training with staff training and stunt training, and so I got to do a lot of it. It was so funny because at the beginning of the series, even with a couple weeks of training behind my belt, they would hand me the staff in a scene, and I just instantly would forget how to act because I would be so overwhelmed with having to fight with this 6-foot-long bow staff. But I thought that was really special because at the beginning, Courtney or Stargirl, she shouldn't be as comfortable with that staff. And then towards the end of the season, when they gave me that staff, I felt so confident, wasn't even thinking about it. It was kind of an extension of my arm at that point. And that's where Courtney should have been. So it was cool to kind of have that journey with Courtney.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump in and talk about diabetes. When you're training with a 6-foot bow staff and you are not 6 feet tall, what does that do to your blood sugar? I mean, I'm assuming that there was a lot of planning that had to go into that, and you really had to stay on top of things.
Fortunately, I exercise a lot, so I know how to regulate my blood sugar, because definitely, when I'm more active, it causes my blood sugar to drop. But with the stunt training staff, it's a lot of just staying still and moving the staff around me, so that didn't actually drop my blood sugar. It was more trying to figure out, on set, I was working, one day I worked 20 hours. Obviously, that messes with my blood sugar, and I really just had to learn to accept the circumstances. And some days I was going to have highs and lows and not beat myself up about it. because I was working hours that aren't humanly normal.
Can you share your diabetes management? Do you wear a CGM? Do you use an insulin pump? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I've always done insulin injections. I have my pin, and I actually have a half-unit pin, which I got this past year, which has been really helpful. And then I have a CGM, a Dexcom.
Oh, and when did you start using that, if you don't mind me asking?
2 years ago, I believe.
Oh, so it's pretty recent.
Yeah, I started living by myself, and it was either that or one of the diabetes service dogs. And I had the CGM for the very first time, and I was like, okay, I can't imagine a life without this, just for safety reasons. My mom wanted me to have something where she could feel more secure.
I was going to say, who gave you that choice? Because as a mom of my child is still in high school.
Especially during that time, I was having so many lows during the night. It's actually when I started eating really healthy and working out a lot, but because of that, I was just having lows all the time. And she's like, I do not feel comfortable you living by yourself with all these lows. This is not safe. And so, Dexcom.
Do you share with your mom? Like, does she see your numbers, or is that not?
Yes, I share with my mom, my dad, my boyfriend, and my fellow diabetic who is on Stargirl with me, named Cameron Geldon. We have each other's follow apps, and that's really fun.
Wait. There's another person with diabetes on the show?
Yes, and we're both superheroes on the show, and we're like, come on.
So did you know each other before the casting?
No, well, that's the thing. We had never met, but he had to film something with one of my friends. And she had reached out to me. She was like, hey, can I give this guy your number? Like, he's a type 1 diabetic. He's talking about wanting to get involved with JDRF. And I told him I thought you were, so can I give him your contact info? So I got this random text saying, hey, are you going to the walk next month? If you are, I'd love to join you. I know you're from Christina. And we just it kind of sprinkled away. We never connected again. It just never worked out. And then he booked it, and he goes to give me my number. And we're like, oh my gosh, we talked 3 years ago. Wow. And he's like, oh my, it's all coming back to me. And we hadn't met, but we had talked, and it was really funny and weird.
That's great, though. I mean, obviously not everybody who has diabetes is going to be friends, right? My son accuses me of that sometimes, you should meet this person. But it sounds like it worked out really well.
Yeah, but I have to say, maybe this is just optimism, or not optimism, just rose-colored glasses, definitely. But every time I meet a diabetic, they're the best person in my eyes. I'm like, oh, I love them. We go through the same things. We're soulmate best friends. At least with my experience. Yes. But like I said, rose-colored glasses might be a part of that. Well,
I think it's more, a 15-year-old boy doesn't want his mom making friends for him, right? But everybody with type 1 is wonderful.
It could definitely be that.
So, all kidding aside, though, I'm sure you don't talk about it all day on the set. I don't want to imply that you do. But has it come in handy? I mean, do you both kind of help each other? Is it just a kinship and a friendship on set?
I think it's more of having that companionship, that person who understands when we're on the 17th hour of work and they bring out another snack that just is carby, but we're hungry and sleepy, but we don't want to eat all these carbs, and just being able to look at each other and talk to each other and understand. That was just so nice to have.
And you're both, well, obviously you're playing the superhero, but the other actor is playing a superhero as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so that will lead me to one of my questions. I had a couple of listeners who wanted to know if you have any issues wearing diabetes technology under the costume. Right back to her answer. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by OneDrop. And OneDrop is diabetes management for the 21st century. OneDrop was designed by people with diabetes for people with diabetes. OneDrop's glucose meter looks nothing like a medical device. It's sleek, compact, and seamlessly integrates with the award-winning OneDrop mobile app. Sync all your other health apps to OneDrop to keep track of the big picture and easily see health trends. And with a OneDrop subscription, you get unlimited test strips and lancets delivered right to your door. Every OneDrop plan includes access to your own certified diabetes coach. Have questions but don't feel like waiting for your next doctor's visit? Your personal coach is always there to help. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the OneDrop logo to learn more. Right back to my interview. I'm asking Brec about wearing diabetes gear under the costume. So you don't wear an insulin pump, but you wear a CGM, and the Dexcom is just a little bit of a raised bump. Do you have to do any accommodations for that? And I know it can be personal, so.
No. I'm an open book. When I was doing the costume, it partook in about 12 to 15 fittings, hours and hours upon work. Like dozens of people touched and worked on it. And while we were doing the fitting, I saw the G5, which was bigger than the G6.
Right.
It's still small, but bigger. And they're like, oh, but you can take that off. And I was like, I can, but I'm not going to, because I for safety reasons, it makes me feel more comfortable. It helps my, like everything. And LJ, the costume designer, she was super understanding. But yeah, I have my Dexcom. My super suit is super tight. So I'm sure if you watch close enough when the series comes out, you'll be able to spot it sometimes. But like, it is what it is.
Well, you just gave a challenge to everybody with diabetes in their family watching. They're going to be freeze framing.
Yeah, no, you're going to be able to see it. Fortunately, I think a lot of times they would go in and edit it out. We do have that CGI and editing budget, which makes it nice. But I've like some of the episodes I've watched, I've spotted it. So I'm so curious to see if other people will be able to as well.
And let me ask you about Cameron, if you don't mind. And again, this is too personal. I'll take this part out. But let me ask you about Cameron. Does he wear a pump or a CGM? Can we be spotting for stuff on him?
Yeah, so I know he's had more experience in like the pump world than I have. Oh, I've never had one, so that doesn't take much. I'm not exactly sure. I know he was more lenient to take it on and off than I was, but that would be a question for him. I'm not really sure.
All right, well, we'll just get our remote controls out and we'll just stop it as the show goes. That's really funny.
Yes.
You know, it does have to be difficult because, as you said, there's crazy hours. They are feeding you, but maybe it's not exactly what everybody wants to have at those long hours, those long days, as you mentioned, the carbs. But you've been in television for a long time. I mean, I'm curious, are you able to talk to the people on the set and say, you know, I really would prefer this or I need that? Or is it just a question of you kind of finding your way through what's out there?
I have a couple things with that. It's really interesting. As an actor, it's so easy to get this diva persona. You ask for anything and someone's going to call you a diva. And so I always felt really bad or that I couldn't ask for things because I never wanted that. But then at some point you have to realize there's people there that want to help you, that will help you. It's their job to help you. And so walking onto this set, I made a pact with myself that when I needed help, I wasn't going to be afraid to ask because of what other people were going to think, just for my own health. I say health as well. And so I went into the show with that new perspective, and it definitely was helpful. Like we have a craft service guy who provides all the snack foods. And I became best friends with him. And they were absolutely amazing to me. They would get if ever there was a time I wanted something special, they never made me feel like a diva for asking for it, which is so great of them. And then also, Cameron and I share something else. We both actually have celiac disease as well. So our diet is extremely strict. And once again, that's health. That's not me being like a diva, like, oh, I can't eat gluten because I don't want to. I can't. So once again, I think maybe having these health issues makes it easier for me to ask because I kind of have an excuse, but it still was difficult to get over that hump.
Well, and I know that there are going to be younger people, maybe more than usual, listening to the show because you're on it. And I'm so glad you said that because it's very difficult to ask for things, right? It's difficult to say, I'm different, I need. Nobody wants to be a bother or, as you're saying, like a diva. Nobody wants to be perceived that way. And I'm curious, were you always like that? Or you said you made a pact on this show. Do you feel like it took you a while to build up, to have the confidence to ask for those things?
100%. I have to give a lot to living by myself for the first time. I think living in LA I was 18, my mom and dad prepared me as much as they could, but it's hard living by yourself. And I think that's the time when I really learned. So not diabetes set aside, that's the time of my life that I learned that it's okay to ask for help. But it took practice. I think asking for help is a skill that you have to work on. And sometimes you have to swallow your pride. And sometimes you have to feel like a diva or needy. But in the long run, if you can do that, you'll be so much happier.
That's fantastic. I know you've gone to JDRF Children's Congresses. I know you've been very involved with JDRF. What's it like for you when you meet these kids? Because they're so excited to meet you. There's somebody on TV who lives with type 1 and goes through what I go through and takes shots and has to put the CGM on and their mom worries and wants to follow just like my mom. Is it still fun for you to talk to these kids?
Oh, yes. Like I said, maybe it's rose-colored glasses, but every time I meet another diabetic, I have this instant connection with them. I'm like, oh my gosh, do you miss drinking a regular Coke without having to pay for it for the next 24 hours. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't remember the last time I did. Like, it's so funny. Just like what I feel like when you can connect to someone on such a personal thing, like it's just fun. And then, yeah, like I was a kid with diabetes. And so like being able to like have these things that I've learned throughout the years and kind of helping them. Like if they've had questions, I feel like, oh, I've been in your shoes. Let me tell you what helped me. Hopefully it'll help you. I mean, all bodies are different, but kind of like that older sibling. I think that's so fun.
I wanted to ask you, and this may be a really dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I wanted to ask you, there was a movie that you were in, and I couldn't see it. I'm sorry. I don't do any kind of horror movies. I don't do scary stuff. 47 meters down, uncaged.
Yeah.
Right, which was all water and scary and horror. And was that, and again, I don't know anything about how they make movies, so I don't know. Maybe it was in a swimming pool. But was that hard to film with somebody who has type 1? Did that present any unique challenges?
That was the coolest, best experience for me. It's because I actually never was in the water, not once. The filming process, if you were in the water, was insane. And like in hindsight, because I actually originally auditioned for one of the Mean Girls, but whatever it was, maybe I wasn't right for it. Shooting schedule with Stargirl didn't align. For whatever reason, I didn't get it, but they offered me a smaller, like I'm like the Mean Girl in it. And in hindsight, like it would have been a really big thing to overcome, having to be underwater. They were underwater for 8 hours a day. I'm sure like my blood sugar I would have figured it out because I refuse to let diabetes stop me from doing anything, but it definitely would have been a battle that I haven't had to deal with yet.
All right. Sorry for my ignorance. If I had seen it, I'm sure I would have known that, but there's no way.
No. It's totally okay. Every time someone finds out I'm in that movie, they're like, how do you get killed by the shark? I'm like, I don't get killed. They're like, oh, you're the one that survives the shark? I was like, no, I never see the shark. It's totally okay. That's hilarious.
Oh my God. That's too funny. When you were diagnosed, you were 8 years old. And I'm curious, did your family meet other people with diabetes right away? Did you do the JDRF walks and things like that? Or did it take you a while to find people?
I got involved with JDRF pretty quickly. I think I was diagnosed in January. And I think that October I did the walk. And that was actually, I think that year was the year I was most involved with JDRF, not talking about like recent years, like ambassador, things like that. But we raised so much money. We had a team of like 40 people come out and all walk with like Brec's Buddies shirts on. So pretty instantly I got involved with JDRF. They've always been that sense of community for me, and I'm so grateful for them. Actually, funny enough, I think when I was 10, to be chosen for Children's Congress as one of like the diabetic kids that goes, you have to like write an essay. And I wrote an essay trying to get chosen, and I didn't. But 8 years later, or 9 years later, whatever it is, I got to come as like one of the people speaking on the panel and one of like the role models for all the kids who got chosen. I'm like, wow, that's full circle. I felt so blessed. It was such a cool like thing to look back on.
That is great. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Children's Congress really is incredible. So your schedule for the next couple of weeks, months is going to be bananas, I would assume. How does it work? So the whole series is shot?
Yeah, so we shot for 8 months last year, and actually like these past few months have been pretty not busy for me because we call it the hiatus, and we're waiting to hear about season 2. So fingers crossed about that. But right now it's kind of just like the waiting game. And then I imagine I'll start doing press promoting first season. I can't talk too much about it, but I've heard about me getting to go to some of those conventions, like similar to like Comic-Con or WonderCon, things like that. And I'm just like above the moon. I think that's the coolest. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Well, and superhero movies and the whole genre is obviously, goes without saying, is so huge right now. Is this something that when you were younger, not even as an actress, because these are great roles to play, but as a consumer, is this your thing? Did you go to these kinds of movies? Are you into comic book characters?
So I never read comics growing up, but I've always been like the first one to go see the comic movies that come out. That being said, though, like I remember one day on set in particular, I was in a harness because I was supposed to be flying in the scene. So I was in our green screen room on set, hanging in this harness in my superhero costume with this like custom, beautifully made cosmic staff. And I was like, oh my gosh, my dreams have been made. I did not know this was my dream, but this exact thing is my dream.
It must be wild to work in the green screen settings, though. I mean, as an actress, you don't know what's around you.
It is so weird. I had never done anything like it before. And so in it, there's Stripe. He's a 15 or 16 foot robot. And while we had a practical one, anytime like we were fighting together, or a lot of times if we were in random places just talking, it was all CGI. So I was talking to that tennis ball. Like if you've ever watched like BTS videos, like I had that tennis ball. And I'm really hoping, for many reasons, that we get picked up for a second season, but particularly because like I'll have watched the whole first season by the time we go back to film. And so when I'm talking to that tennis ball, I'll know exactly what I'm talking to. For first season, it was pure imagination. I was just doing the best I could. Wow. But I feel like with second season, I would have more point of reference. But it was definitely hard, but it was really, really cool.
I know I got to start wrapping it up here, but so here's a question I got from a listener. It's actually from Jessica wanted to ask. It was her daughter's question. And this might be a tough one. She wants to know why you like acting. This young woman is 9 years old and has type 1 herself.
Oh, why do I like acting? It's funny. So the only other thing I've ever wanted to be in my life was an astronaut, because I thought the moon was made of cheese. And then when I found out the moon wasn't made of cheese, I said, well, I don't want to be an astronaut anymore. I'm going to be an actress. So like little 6-year-old Brec was running around and people would be like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd be like, I don't want to be anything. I'm going to be an actress. And so I feel like it really was just put in me. And I think I love it because the way it stimulates my creative side, and also the way it's created this, I'm able to have empathy for other people in my work. So like as I take on another character, I feel like while studying and becoming this character, I learned so much about the world and different people. And I'm such a people person. So I feel like a job where I literally get to play other people and learn about people is such a perfect fit for me.
And before I let you go, I don't want to make too much of an issue of it, but I do think it's worth talking about that in the last few years, it's been really nice to see a lot of the superhero shows and movies be led by women. I mean, this show is Stargirl, and I think that's just phenomenal. I'm so excited to have young women and little girls watching this show. Does it make you a little nervous, though? I mean, when you were filming this, did you kind of think at the back of your mind, I'm going to be somebody's role model, somebody's Halloween costume?
Fortunately, I feel like Belle and the Bulldogs, which was the Nickelodeon show I was on for a couple of years, prepared me for that, or prepared me for this. I played a female quarterback, very strong female lead. I had girls dressing up for me as Halloween. So I think that was a good stepping stone for what this will be. I mean, I'm not sure what this will be, but I hope it's big, and I hope girls are watching it and feeling inspired. I feel prepared. I'm not scared.
Yeah, that's a great point, because that show was terrific and really it was different too, which was fun. It really put it in a different light. Brec, thank you so much for talking with me. Please tell Cameron that we said hi and we're excited to watch the both of you on this show. I really appreciate you spending some time with me. We'll be looking for the CGM outline, and I hope we get to talk again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
You can find out more about Stargirl and about Brec. Just go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the episode homepage. We have transcriptions now I've been adding for 2020 and hoping to go back and do that for many more episodes. But if you know someone who would prefer to read the show rather than listen, you can send them to the episode homepage. It should all be there, along with the clip I was telling you about earlier and some more information about Brec. I think this is going to be a big hit. I'm so excited for her, and I will follow up and see if we can talk to Cameron as well. What a nice thing to have support and somebody who gets it on the set. All right, up next is Tell Me Something Good. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And when you have a toddler diagnosed with type 1 like we did, you hear rumblings for a long time about the teen years, right? Oh, the dreaded teen years. But it did hit us a little early, and I was really glad that we had Dexcom. Benny's insulin needs started going way up around age 11. He looks like a completely different person. I was going through photos. My cousin was asking me to send some photos for an event that she's having. So I was going through photos from 3 to 4 years ago, right when he was in the swing of this, right at the beginning. He looks like a completely different person. He's probably grown 6 or 7 inches just since age 11. I don't have to spell out what else has happened. He's shaving. I mean, he looks completely different. It's so wild. But along with the hormone swings, I just can't imagine managing diabetes during this crazy time without the Dexcom continuous glucose monitoring system. We can react more quickly to highs and lows, see trends, and adjust insulin doses with advice from our endocrinologist. I know using the Dexcom G6 has helped improve Benny's A1C and overall health. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. To learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. In Tell Me Something Good this week, we have some great stories from athletes. I'm going to start with Zoe Cook. She was told by a coach when she was younger that she would never be an athlete because of type 1 diabetes. Zoe says she was diagnosed at 10, kicked off the competitive swim team because the coach said she was too high risk. Then in middle school, when she was 13, her tennis coach told her that because she went low running sprints, she would have to leave the team. That was the coach who said she would never be an athlete. Zoe says she's really glad that she had parents who could tell me he was wrong. Way to go, Zoe. And she also says that last year she ran the New York City Marathon with her mother, who also has type 1. Way to go, Zoe, and way to show that dumb coach, what things really are all about. It is amazing how I always think that that's ancient history, right? That someone will say you can't do this because of diabetes, but it still happens, and we still have to advocate for our kids. Or if you're living with type 1, I know you have to advocate for yourself. And, we'll get there. It's just a lot of education. Julie's Tell Me Something Good is herself. Julie Radin has been type 1 for 53 years. She posted all her wonderful numbers. She has a pretty extraordinary A1C, 4.9. She has incredible time in range, and she is 61. If you listen to the show often, you know that I don't often share numbers. We all do this in our own way. But man, Julie, I wanted to share that because I can't even imagine how hard you work. Good for you. She also is a hiker and stays very active. I did ask her, I sent a note back and I said, what's something you didn't think you could do when you were first diagnosed that you have been able to accomplish? And I thought she would say, hiking or staying active or something like that. And she really hit it on the nose when she said, I hate to say this, but successfully living to 60. I was always told I wouldn't. So that does give you perspective. Julie, thank you so much for responding and sending that in. I appreciate it. And finally, Mike Joyce. Mike shared that last year he hiked 2,200 miles from Maine to Georgia. And this year he is going to hike the Pacific Northwest Trail. That's a 1,200-mile trail from Glacier National Park to Olympic National Park. I think I've profiled him before or mentioned him because I remember this last year when he was on the Appalachian Trail. Right, Mike? He says he uses Afrezza, the inhaled insulin, and packs a ton of food. I remember this, Mike. I'm going to have to look you up and put up a link from last year when we talked about this. And he sent me some pictures that I'll share on social media. And one more story for Tell Me Something Good. I got a review that I wanted to share. I sometimes share reviews. I get reviews on podcast apps like Apple Podcast Player or whatever. There's a bajillion of them. And it's always wonderful to get a nice review. So I appreciate that. If you want to do that, I love it. Thank you so much. It does help the show. But, frankly, Apple Podcasts is kind of a pain to leave reviews on. But I got one that made me really smile, and I wanted to share it. T. Piper writes, Stacey is a diabadass. I love it. Thank you for being so frank and direct with the head of Dexcom. You are our voice, and we are so grateful. Our family is so appreciative. That refers to the Dexcom interview we did recently, I believe, about the CGMs in the hospital. And if you haven't heard, I did ask about assistance, financial assistance during this time because other companies are doing that and would Dexcom follow suit? And they said at the time, well, we're thinking about it. We haven't done anything. And more recently, they did announce some help. So I will link that up as well. But T. Piper, that's very cool. Thank you very much for that review. I have to tell you, it made my husband really laugh. I showed it to him and he thought that was amazing. A diabadass. I appreciate it so much. All right, give me your Tell Me Something Good stories. I love to share them on the show. I post in the Facebook group all the time, or you can always email me, Stacey at diabetes-connections.com. Working on a couple of projects behind the scenes. If you have a homegrown diabetes company or a smaller diabetes company and you are looking for advertising, I'm going to be posting in the Facebook group and probably on the public page as well pretty soon about a new project that I'm working on. And it's an opportunity for smaller companies to get attention from the type 1 diabetes community. So be on the lookout for that. I'm very excited about it. I already have a couple of partners on board. And, we're just going to keep moving forward. Things do not look the way we thought they would look this year, but we have no choice but to keep moving. And thank you all for all of the support you show, not only by listening, downloading, sharing the show, but by taking part in the Zoom chats that I'm doing, by just having the community in the Facebook group. It really helps me personally just feel better about things, and I hope it's helping you as well. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions, who is slam-packed, jammed busy. Is that even a word, a phrase? Because everybody wants to do a podcast now, and everybody wants to do one, remote at home and doesn't know how to do it. So they're all calling John, and he's really busy right now, which I guess is good. There's another silver lining. And thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Simms. I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Simms Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.